What's going on, everyone? My name is Nicholas Merton here at DataDash, and today is December 30th of 2017. Well, folks, today I'm here to talk about a cryptocurrency that as I look more and more into the project, I get more excited to talk about here on the channel. And seeing as I've spent the time to do my due diligence and understand the underlying technology, I feel like I'm ready to explain it here on the DataDash channel and give you all a good full-depth analysis. As you all might know if you keep up with my channel, I tend not to do too many coin coverage videos nowadays because I really try to wait and find projects that bring a sense of innovation or change into the space to fix the larger issues at hand. And today is no exception. Today I'm here to cover a cryptocurrency known as Roblox or Roblox. You're probably going to have a war somewhere of people debating on how to pronounce it, but nonetheless, Roblox, I'm really excited to talk about here today on the DataDash channel because it's a currency that fixes one of the largest issues, I think honestly the largest issue in cryptocurrencies right now, keeping us from reaching mainstream adoption. So today we're going to be doing an in-depth analysis, keeping things short, sweet, and to the point, however, in a presentation format, something you usually don't see on the DataDash channel. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into it. So we first have to focus on the issue that Roblox is fixing at its core, and it's the largest issue right now in cryptocurrencies, and it is no other than scalability. Let's face it, it's one of the biggest issues for cryptocurrencies right now. If we take a look at the real world and the demand of transactions that are being requested around the world, we know that, for example, Visa and MasterCard process over 7,000 to 8,000 transactions at any given second, and this is continuously running on a global network. So because of this, we need cryptocurrencies if we want them to be a peer-to-peer system of transaction between different parties. We need it to be scalable. We need it to be able to process thousands and possibly tens of thousands of transactions to even compete with MasterCard and Visa. And right now, we just don't have that. And because of it, things like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, and other cryptocurrencies are experiencing slow transactions and high fees because there's such a demand to get onto the network in the limited space that the blocks have through blockchain technology. And because of this, we have congested networks, so people don't know when their transactions are going to be confirmed or placed in the next block. And along with that as well, all of this in total is really preventing us from reaching mainstream adoption, from making cryptocurrencies the ultimate peer-to-peer solution without centralized authority. And some people are willing to take centralized authority without, to avoid the burden that lack of scalability is bringing to cryptocurrencies. So because of this, we need something that can bring that solution. And today I'm here to talk about a cryptocurrency that, from this chart alone, speaks for itself. This is a chart here of the transactions per second with a variety of different cryptocurrencies. As we can see on the left, we have Bitcoin, Dash, Ethereum, Litecoin, and even Ripple, which is known for its transactions that it can process per second. However, on the right-hand side, XRB, that's the currency we're talking about today. That's Roblox. Roblox uses a different form of technology that allows it to stay decentralized, but along with that as well, process way more transactions than traditional blockchain technology. So, what allows it to process so many transactions? The sheer amount comparable to Bitcoin, which is the most valued cryptocurrency that can only process 7 transactions a second. Well, today we're going to be diving into it, and I'm going to help you all understand how this technology functions and why it's so revolutionary. And along with that as well, I'll show you all in real time later on in an actual video that I recorded with a community member from the DataDash Discord of making an actual Roblox transaction. So really excited to show you all that later. But first and foremost, let's go ahead and dive into the technology. And again, as I always say with these coin coverage videos, please read the white paper. And I emphasize it more on this video because we're not going to be talking about the white paper, but this is one of the best reads you could have right now in the cryptocurrency space, guys, to understand this technology. It's rare that you find a white paper that's exciting to read, and I really genuinely liked going through the white paper and taking some time to understand this technology. So I highly recommend you do that. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into the technology here. And we're going to go through and read through some text that I have from online from a variety of different sources. And on the right-hand side here, this is a diagram of some of the technology we're going to be looking at in regards to Roblox and how transactions work. But we'll visit that in just a moment. All right, so let's go ahead here and focus on the text. Roblox is a trustless, low-latency cryptocurrency that utilizes a novel block lattice architecture, and that's what we have here on the right-hand side and we're going to talk about throughout the video, where each account has its own blockchain and achieves consensus via delegated proof-of-stake voting. We'll also talk about that later on in the video and how nodes interact on the network. It offers feeless, instantaneous transactions, as well as unlimited scalability, making Roblox ideal for peer-to-peer transactions. The network requires minimal resources, no high-power mining hardware, and can process high transaction throughput. So all this sounds good, and it seems obviously, of course, with the amount of transactions that it's processing, that it's not using standard blockchain technology. It's something different, and that's the block lattice architecture we're going to look at. So let's go ahead and dive into it a little bit. So the block lattice infrastructure operates like blockchain, but with a few key differences. To start, each account of Roblox protocol has its own blockchain called an account chain. Okay, so your transaction information is going to be stored in your account. Okay, so you're going to keep track of how much Roblox you have. Whereas traditionally in blockchain technology, everything is recorded on a massive public ledger where every single fully validated node on the network, usually people who are mining for Bitcoin, has to keep a record up to date of every single transaction on the network. You are going to keep account of yourself on your own account chain. And the network itself, as we'll take a look at later, keeps record of who has how much Roblox, or sorry, who has Roblox and how many they have. Okay, so it's like a ledger of keeping balances of who has what, rather than, for example, Bitcoin that keeps an entire history of all transactions. So important to keep that in mind. Now, the interesting thing is only account chain users can modify his or her individual change. So you are the only one, of course, who can make transactions and change that value once you have Roblox in your account, okay? So in effect, this means that users can send and update blocks on their account chain without relying on the whole network. So you don't need to communicate with thousands of nodes, and they don't need to confirm your transactions and everything like that. It just simply is a peer-to-peer transaction between you and one other peer, okay? So in order to achieve this, though, to do it securely, any funds sent on Roblox block lattice requires two transactions, a sender transaction and a receiver transaction. And that's where this diagram comes in over here on the right-hand side. So we can see here, for example, we have three different parties. We have A, B, and C. These are people. So let's say, for example, I'm B right here. And we have John, for example, who might be letter C. Let's say that, for example, I want to send him 10 Roblox, okay? So I want to make a transaction from him. He's a cool guy. He did something nice for me, and I want to send him 10 Roblox. So when I send a transaction, I'm actually going to create two different, there's actually going to be two transactions within the commerce that we're doing in regards to me giving him 10 Roblox. It's going to create a send and receiving transaction. So as we go over here, we can read the quotation here. It says, after we've read that it needs both the sender and receiver transaction to achieve it. In order for a transaction to be settled, the receiving party must sign a block confirming that the funds were received. So in order for the sender transaction, which is the second one, that's going to come afterwards, we need to get the receiving transaction to sign. So basically what this means is that in order to transact these funds over to this second account, we need to make sure that the receiving has not only gotten the transaction over the receiving transaction, and they've sent a signature on that transaction back to the sender, where that transaction can be confirmed and go as record into the network as an official transaction. Now, to get a little bit more technical here, you might already kind of get the concept. However, basically each transaction on the Roblox network is a block. So for example, we know for Bitcoin, for example, it's 1 megabyte, and the blocks for Bitcoin are 1 megabyte, and they fit in thousands of transactions, and the nodes have to keep a copy of that on the blockchain. Well, whereas block lattice works a little bit different. Each transaction, remember, we keep account of our transactions. When we want to send a certain amount of Roblox, we create two new blocks, those two transactions, the receiving and sending. So over towards the receiving, it's going to update the balance of that individual's holdings through the new block. And there's also going to be a block created on our end that has the new balance as well with that transaction. So it keeps record of who has what and how much, okay? So that's generally how it works and stuff. I'll have some diagrams listed down below if you want to look at it to get a little bit of a better understanding visually. So we understand that there's going to be two transactions in this. If only the sending party's block is signed, a transaction is pending and or unsettled. So this means that the transaction will not go through. It needs to have that signature from the receiving. Now keep in mind as well, they don't need to sign anything. It's not like someone saying, okay, that's a good transaction. It's all done automatically. And in fact, through the use of user datagram protocol packets or UDP packets, this can all keep, transactions are kept to a low cost of computing costs. And along with that as well, allows people to transfer funds when the receiver is offline. So the person doesn't have to be online signing a signature on there. It can still go through. So now we get that. That's the big mouthful of how the block lattice infrastructure works. But that's how transactions generally work. So it's actually almost purely peer-to-peer. And the nodes on the network, they keep, if anything, a record on who owns what, okay, rather than your entire transaction history. So going towards the nodes and talking about how it's delegated proof of stake, it's important to understand how things work when there's sometimes conflicts on the network. Ryblock keeps its network secure using a delegated proof of stake model, or DPoS, similar to ARK. If any discrepancies arise with conflicting transactions, Ryblock's delegates vote on which transaction to verify as valid. So the delegated proof of stake offers a number of benefits compared to Bitcoin's proof of work mechanism. Whereas proof of work, for example, is dependent on people putting a lot of computing power into mining for blocks and tossing a ton of transactions into those blocks. In this case, what we're doing is we're doing delegated proof of stake, so it requires a lot less computing power. And in fact, many times there is no need for the nodes on the network to really do anything. They don't have to go ahead and check every single transaction. And the reason being is because they only have to do it when there's a conflict on the network, when there's a conflict in transactions, if there's a double spend, or if there is something that, for example, let's say someone is increasing their supposed number of Ryblocks somehow. There's a way that the delegated proof of stake is able to decide, let's say in the case of a double spend, which one is the correct spending. So there will never be a double spend because it takes a look at both the transactions that are trying to be spent. It says, no, this one's the real one. Now, how do they actually keep consistency on the network and keep people from abusing this? Well, it's simply through holding stake in Ryblocks. So to, for example, in DPoS, to have a right in that voting process, to vote on which transaction is right in that double spend, you have to have a lot of Ryblock in your wallet. It's the whole part of delegated proof of stake. The delegation comes from the fact that there's a weighted vote on the users running nodes, and it gives them a weighted vote, meaning more authority in the voting process if they own more Ryblocks. So there's an economic and game theory-based incentive to want to support the network and make proper transactions. So again, a lot of interesting stuff here, much less energy consumption to validate transactions if needed. And again, they aren't always needed. In most cases, transactions can go through without the authority overtaking it. Again, it's mostly peer-to-peer unless there's a conflict and the nodes need to intervene. So let's talk about a few different attacks here, because everyone, when they hear about new technology, they're like, well, Bitcoin's been secure for 9 years. I want to hear about some plausible attacks on this cryptocurrency and how we can combat them. Well, I didn't grab all of them. I have a link down below of different types of attacks and how Ryblocks stays ahead of the game in regards to attempting to reject those attacks. And a lot of it comes in the sense of game theory and making sure there's safety models set in place. So for example, let's say transaction flooding. So this is something that a lot of people would argue with something that has no transaction fee. If there's no transaction fee, why don't I just spam the network with a ton of transactions? That'll show those evil cryptocurrency do-gooders. Well, I guess they're not do-gooders if you think they're evil, but anyways, in regards to transaction flooding, the reason why someone wouldn't be able to flood the network with transactions is because every time you make a transaction, there's a small proof of work that goes into it. So a little bit of computational power you have to put in to send that transaction. Now, it still happens very quick, and it's not detrimental to your computer. Your computer doesn't flare up and your fan starts blowing like crazy. And you could do this on a mobile device as well, as they're working towards making a mobile wallet. However, the reason why this would keep someone away is because this little bit of proof of work for one transaction, if you were to multiply it to 1,000 or 10,000, takes a lot of computational power. And if you want to continue to clog up the network, that's going to take a lot of cost on your end for no reason. So there's no obligation to try to flood the network. And it would be quite a pain on yourself in the sense of a financial burden to try to do that. So it's not going to happen in any real legitimate sense. Along with that as well, some people would argue for a Sybil attack to change ledger entries. So for example, if I went out and I got an Amazon cloud server or something like that, and I downloaded 10,000 copies of the ledger or fake ledger that appears as the real one, and I went over towards the network and I said, see, these 10,000 nodes, aka me, and my ledger, my copies of the ledger. Say that this person owns this much and yada yada, and we should vote this way. Well, here's the thing. A Sybil attack does not work because Sybil attacks would only work if there was no delegated proof of stake. So it would work in this case. Someone could go out and just create a ton of fake notes. However, you have no voting say in the voting process because there's no delegation to your nodes. You have no staking of Ray blocks. You need to have that. So there is a financial incentive for those who have the Ray blocks to be honest and truthful, and all those fake nodes aren't going to do anything because they don't have any authority. They have no delegation to vote on the process of it. So again, really interesting stuff. They've got systems in place to fight against these attacks, and so far Rayblox has been doing well. There hasn't been any serious hiccups. So now that we've talked about this, guys, I know many of you might be interested out there. There are a few different exchanges in regards to buying Ray blocks. However, it's best to probably get your wallet set up first. And whereas you could download the desktop client on the website, I recommend that most start off with the web wallet. It's much faster to start receiving Ray blocks and really much easier to use in general. So I have a link down in the description down below if you want to go open up your first wallet. And down here real quick, before I jump to showing you all the first transaction that I did, not only sending it, but also, or not only receiving a Ray block, but also sending one, I want you to keep in mind when you're going through the process on the website of creating your own wallet, there's two things that are going to pop up after you've typed in an email and a password into the website. First and foremost, you're going to get an identifier. And you need to keep this. This is what you're going to use to log in, almost like a username, into your wallet along with your password. Keep in mind, though, it's going to be a long string of text. However, you can change that in your settings to an alias, as you can see right over here. So you can make it something like, for example, data_dash or something like that, or some kind of thing that would be easy to remember, understand. Along with this as well, you're going to get a seed. Now you need to keep a copy of both your identifier for safety reasons as well as your seed. The reason being is because your seed is going to be used to access your funds if you forget your password. So important to keep that so you can recover your funds just in case, just like any other kind of cryptocurrency. All right, so now before we wrap up the video here, I want to show you guys a real-time transaction to prove that this works, that you don't have to pay any fees, and that it itself can happen within 1 to 2 seconds on every single transaction. So I'm really excited. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump to the videos. All right, guys, so we're going to go ahead and do a real quick Rayblocks transaction here. So we're on the online wallet for the Ray Wallet beta. And as we can see here, I've got my address here on the right-hand side for one of my accounts. So I'm going to go ahead and just go ahead and copy it. And then I'm going to go over here to Discord. We got Divine here today who's going to go ahead and send me one Ray block over to my address.
Okay, and I'm sending now.
And just within a matter of about a second, and probably a little bit more than a second, it was able to send just like that. That's ridiculous. That's awesome, man. So as you can see, we've been sending it back and forth, the exact same Ray block, and every time there's no fees. It's just been going back and forth and back and forth, and literally within practically a second, we're able to send a feeless transaction between one another. So all right, so I'm going to go ahead here, and I'm going to send back that one XRB over towards Divine. I just sent over the transaction now.
Yep, I got it.
So as many of you might have noticed, I nerded out completely after receiving and sending my first Ray block. And the reason I did kind of nerd out on it was because it was the first time in my life I got to experience transacting a cryptocurrency without incurring any fees, and also both sending and receiving it within a matter of 1 to 2 seconds. And that's something extremely revolutionary. And to know that that could be happening for thousands of people at any given moment on the network is amazing. As someone who doesn't want to get involved for cryptocurrencies just to make a lot of money or invest in the next crap coin, and really cares about making cryptocurrencies peer-to-peer digital cash that we can use on a network and get away from centralized authority and centralized trust, I'm really excited about this. I believe that this is a step in the right direction. And though the network type the structure of the block lattice and everything is still relatively new. I think the project started back towards 2014 and 2015. As much as this is new and exciting, and at the same time might lead to a lot of questions on security, I am extremely excited to see that new systems like this that are being built can process thousands upon thousands of transactions, and they still keep the decentralized aspect in check. So I'm really excited about this, guys. And I want to say thank you all for watching very much. I think it's one of the best cryptocurrencies out there right now to keep an eye on. Whether or not it takes off in the long term, the underlying technology is a step in the right direction. And if you guys are, feeling a little bit nice during this holiday season, I know it's a little bit after Christmas, but if y'all want to donate to Data Dash down below some Ryblocks, you're welcome to down below in the description. I will be accepting Ryblocks now. I believe in it that much, and I really, really believe this project could take off long term. So I'm excited for it. I hope people continue to use it for commerce, and we continue to see more innovation in this space of scalability for cryptocurrencies, all right? Well, anyways, everyone, that's it for the video. Thank you all so much for watching. Please like and subscribe and leave a comment down below what you all think about Ryblocks. Do you think it can last long term, and do you think the block lattice is a step in the right direction in regards to scalability? Anyways, everyone, that's it for the video. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Stay tuned.